Thank you very much to the team of JSConf to organize this in a very complex year such as this, and so I appreciate the effort. My name is Eva, as people say. I really like to make this kind of animations that are a bit useless, but I love them. My full name is Maria Evangelina Ferreira Kuzminski, but that is very long and very complicated to pronounce, so please call me Eva. I've been making websites since 2008, since I was in middle school. So I was curious to read about HTTP and CSS. So I created this wonderful website where I was just asking my schoolmates the booklets of the cities. So I scanned them and I upload them. So if you couldn't buy the CDs, you could find them here about how the images inside were, and I had a lot of music. I had even Britney Spears or Green Day, Evanescence. Every text was blue. The links were blue because I didn't know how to change them. So I'm very fond of this website, even though it is very ugly. And the years went by, so I discovered that I really loved making websites and that I loved it. Among the sites that I created, I had created websites about bands that I liked. For example, about Kitty. This is a metal band from Canada. You can look it up. And I like how creating websites, I created websites to complete news about musicians, and I started receiving messages about people from all over the world that also like my band, and it was also amazing. And then when I finished high school and I had to decide what to be when I was older, because the time was that I really knew that I wanted to make websites. I knew that I liked it. So I could apply to a scholarship to access a short career. And in that scholarship, they asked me specifically why I wanted to study this. This is something that surprised me a lot because I was used to, well, when someone got a scholarship, they had to justify their academic merits and not so much their enthusiasm about studying. So this was one of the things that I really liked about that scholarship application. I really had to prove that this was something that I was passionate about. So that was above the academic merit that we had in high school. So I really found my scholarship application, and it said something like a letter to Santa or something like that. I want to connect people, and the web allows me to do that. And that was adorable. That was me at 18. But the years went by, and today I still work doing websites, and I'm very proud of what I built. And I'm very positive looking at the future. And among many things, I started giving talks, giving classes in universities. I've always worked as a freelancer, and then I started working for different companies. And during all this time, I kept the love and passion that I have for the web. So I want to show you the top 10 of the best things that I saw growing up in the web. This is a very personal opinion. You're going to notice that I really love front end, the UI space where you can design, even if without being a designer. So I am very on the side of front end because that is what I like. So the number 10 is less unnecessary images. When in 2008 we want to do a gradient, we had to open Photoshop, make a 1 pixel wide image, and that we can put as a background, a repeating background. Maybe some of you lived that. And that was very upsetting because when you want to modify that gradient, you had to open Photoshop again, making the image again, exporting it again, modifying the code, uploading everything again through FTP. And it took a lot of time. So nowadays we have gradients with gradient lines or radius gradient that solved our problem, having an image that is not really necessary. Another thing that about unnecessary images that we suffered about those who made websites is the round borders. There was no border radius, so what we had to do is using 4 pseudo elements, each on a corner, to locate an image that we had in Photoshop that we positioned precisely, and we had to do that in every corner. And of course, if we had the need to change, for example, the color, you had to redo all the process. So when finally border radius was here, because I was really excited, because wow, I was finally able to make circles and round borders, and I don't have to open Photoshop to do that. And in reality, I realized that I couldn't really do circles with border radius because the text didn't adapt to it. But I wasn't mad, because we have a lot of clip path shapes and SVG that allows us to do this very simple, do things that are not rectangles shapes, where the text adapts to a shape such as a circle. So it's very amazing not to have unnecessary images, because you have less requests to the server, because it's less costly. We don't have to pay that, and it's better for our code because it's a lot cleaner and it can grow better. And it is amazing that we are no longer forced to work the web with rectangles within rectangles. Okay, number 9 is all ES6. I think ES6 is the biggest change we have lived in the latest years. One of my favorite things, we're going to call it arrow functions. And they came here to improve the way we made anonymous function. Instead of just writing function and 2 parentheses, we just wrote the parameter name, an arrow, and then our code is more ordered, and we can do very interesting stuff, such as not putting parentheses in if we have just a parameter, or just an instruction within keys. So it is very interesting. This is something that I really loved about ES6, that has a lot of features, brought a lot of features to JavaScript. Number 8 was the layout revolution, the floats. I hope you never had to learn floats. And if you did, please know that you do not have to use them, so you can enjoy your life without floats. Floats were suffering for a lot of us because we had to patch them a lot of the time. And we learned a lot how to do these hacks, because it is a style that we could change a lot. And finally, grids and Flexbox were 2 technologies that allowed us to change our layouts in a very stable way. And the question is always should we use grids or should we use Flexbox? And the answer is you should use them both, because you can combine them in your CSS and you can use them together, so that one and the other could become a wonderful element about your website. So if you have a question about how to use them, please ask me about that. And also the box alignment module was created. This is some sort of working draft of the W3C, where alignment is separated and elements are separated in a different module. It's not grid, it's not module, it is a different module within CSS. So every time we use alignment items, we are using the box alignment module. And what's happening here is that the implementation in browsers is even faster, because the modules are getting smaller and they can be implemented faster. And what I love to mention is that CSS is awesome, and we owe a lot today to 2 amazing women that allowed us to have browsers and acceptance in a lot of the browsers. in Flexbox and Greece. These women are Jen Simmons and Rachel Andrew. These are the people who work in web development 20 years ago, and they achieved having the browsers implementing these modules and teach developers how can we use them to create all these layouts. I always like to mention these two women because they changed the history of CSS in the past years. And number 7 is fetch. Fetch is XML HTTP request renewed. I just don't have to type that ever again or say it out loud, because that was something very complex. I was always wrong writing it, wrong saying it. And of course, we don't have to do it again, because now we have fetch. I'm not going to deny that thanks to XHR, I learned a lot of HTTP calls, and I realized that there was a 418 call, which was basically I'm a teapot. I invite you to read about that in Wikipedia. That's very interesting. And when fetch started to happen, that was something very interesting, because it didn't work anywhere. It was a wonderful idea to implement in browsers, but it was just not implemented in any browser. So then appeared the Regina George meme about stop trying to make fetch happen. And many years later, there was always Regina George saying, we still can't use fetch, but nowadays we can. We have 95% of browsers with support for fetch, so now we can enjoy it without any problems. Number 6 is picture element. This is a tag that is not very new, but I think it modified a lot the way in which we wrote responsive images. It is a tag that allows us to work responsive images from HTML and avoids using unnecessary data on behalf of the user. And we can just tell the browser to load one image or the other, all from HTML. So we can deliver this different image formats, so the design team can use a better image, for example, for desktop or for mobile devices. This is something amazing. And it works within this picture tag with different image sources. We can indicate in media in what screen size we want it to load. And everything has a very native fallback. The browsers that do not understand picture, what they do is load the default image, and that is the small logo. And this tag also allows us to use this as a fallback from different image format, for example, WebP or JPG. If the browser does not allow the WebP format, it will recognize the other. This WebP format allows us to save data. This is a new one, as well as a BIF. This is a new format that was released on September. And this person wrote an article about how can we implement this image format, and how can we start using it. So this picture element works in 95% of browsers today. So it is amazing. If you're not using it, I invite you to start using. WebP image format is also very well implemented, and a BIF is something very new. It was released in September, so it has 25% acceptance. But if you use it in a picture tag, you can generate a native fallback. So the browsers that have a BIF, that support a BIF, can load it, and those who can't are going to fall back. Number 5 is componentization, and I do not refer to frameworks. I really prefer the concept of components. That is the amazing thing that happened in the past years. The frameworks were a consequence of that. The components allows us to have a much more stable architecture, much more scalable architecture, and create elements that are really reusable. So we can have a lot of elements that we can reuse all the time. And I think that something that I like the most about components is that they allow us to work with the design team. Maybe as developers, we didn't have such a big connection, but now through componentization, we are working together and generate better products at the end of the day. Number 4 is animations. I know that components sound more important, but I really like animations. That is something that I really love, even though I don't earn money from that. Animations in 2008 were basically made in Flash, but Flash died. And when it died, there was an empty hole in many of our hearts because it was something that was very easy to do for animations. It has a very low entry barrier. It was just having the software, and that's that. But now we had a space that we didn't have a nice way to have animations to the level of quality that Flash allowed us. But now we can make animations, very interesting, high quality animations with CSS, with JavaScript, or with SVG, and all of these together. If you want to search in CodeP, there is a very interesting account. I recommend Chris Gannon. He makes animations such as this spinning pizza. It's not very useful. Also, Miosane, she makes CSS and HTML animations. There is no JavaScript, no SVG in these animations. And also Rachel Nabors. This is a person who used to do comics and now is doing web development. So she has a lot of videos in YouTube and talks about how to make animations. So I invite you to look for more about her. Number 3 is HTML5 forms. I don't know if you ever suffered validating directions, email addresses in regex, regular expressions. Regex is one of the most wonderful and most horrible things in programming languages. All the time we're trying to read stuff about regular expressions and trying to remember how they go. And every time on the next day, we forget how they work. Until some fake books start to appear with jokes in the middle, such as regex by trial and error, combining bars and dots until something happens, or just changing stuff and seeing what happens. That is the definition of our work. Because the truth is that regular expressions, we suffered a lot as developers when we had something as basic as validating an email form. Now we have native validations, such as email validation, where we do not have to write this regular expression because the browser does it. Now, the required field, when you used to need a script that said if that field was required and validated, and now we just have to write it in the HTML. And also the type number, the input, so we can modify the keyboard in the mobile device. And also something amazing that was very costly to amount was the type date. This is a very native date picker in the browser, because when I had to create a date picker in the browser, I ended up using jQuery and writing CSS and JavaScript and begging for it to work. And now we don't have to do that. We have a basic date picker. Number 2 is Node. And I couldn't really explain in JSConf Mexico what Node is. We all know what it is, and we all know how important it is. I am going to recommend you to look at the talk where Ryan Dahl presents this Node. Maybe it happened in 2009. And to learn to see what was the idea behind creating Node and how it advanced throughout the years. You can see that if you're interested. And number 1 was developer tools. There is nothing that I love the most in web development, especially in apps, in front-end. They are amazing because developers tools started with the concept of Firebug. It was a development tool that was able to be used in Firefox. And now we have them in all browsers, even in Internet Explorer. and have developer tools that are very good, and they help us making a lot of websites. We can work HTML, CSS, JavaScript directly on the browsers. We can design in the browser. We can verify accessibility. We can verify if a progressive web app works well or has a failure directly in the browsers without just moving to another device. It's better performance, better memory, how it works the memory in the browsers. I recommend that you check this talk from Katie Fenn, where she explains how to use dev tools to learn to use memory. And also tools that are exclusive from frameworks such as Angular, they can be used directly in the browsers. This is amazing how developer tools encompass all of that. And I love this cat. Okay, so we are in an amazing time to learn web development, don't you think? Well, maybe not. Why? Because nowadays, when we log into a website, we do not see those amazing things that I talked about. Not necessarily. I mean, I see the round border, I see the drop shadow, but the user experience is not very good. So what happened in the medium when we log into a website today? We have a banner to accept cookies, a banner to disable your ad blocker, a banner to sign up your newsletter, and a question about a long notification. And when we close all those pop-ups, we do not remember what we wanted from that site. So the experience of navigating websites today is not equal to the experience of all the things that improved. Something happened in the medium. We were doing well, but things happened. This is a very funny sentence whose context is not very funny because it's from the former president of Argentina. But it describes the situation where we had a lot of good things happening on the web, but something failed. So let's see what failed. Let's see what didn't went well. For start, push notifications. One day, some person just woke up in the morning and decided, well, it would be a good idea to have notifications directly in the browser when there's something new. So that was a good idea. And this kind of banners started to be creating. There is a banner here that's saying, would you like to receive notification from this website? And every website started using them, even medicine websites that modify the buttons. And it says here, this site would like to send you notifications, and the buttons is allow or no, I don't want to live. So what happened? The years went by, and basically we started to realize that push notifications were not a good idea. And browsers such as Firefox started to create features within the browser, such as this push notifications blocker. So if you used Firefox, you didn't suffer from push notifications, because most of push notifications were something that people weren't interested in. And something that is very sad, because first we created the technology and then we created the technology to block this technology. So, well, we got it wrong. Then is the cookie banner. This is this lovely things that this is the first thing and probably the only thing that we see when we browse. And this is something that always existed, but now it's more prominent due to the GDPR, which was implemented in Europe a couple of years ago. And what this law does is talking about privacy in the web. And a lot of times you just think about, well, I don't have nothing to hide, but it is not about that. It's not about having things to hide. It's just there are things about your life that are private. For example, some people did a study and about, for example, period tracking apps, and they realized that these apps shared information about periods with third parties. So we found ourselves in our situations. So my mom does not know the date of my periods, but Facebook and Google does. And why is that? Because we're sharing such private information and so important information personally with companies that really do not have to know this information. We do not decide what kind of information do they have? So why are we doing this atrocious privacy violation? And the general answer is, well, if the product is for free, so you are the product. But this justification is just a very vague justification to not accept that we can do it better and that perhaps we're doing it wrong. If we encrypt passwords, if we can encrypt Telegram messages and Telegram or Signal WhatsApp messages, so why can't we encrypt our data? Benedicta Rae is creating a period tracker. Is a mobile application that is completely encrypted. And this is how things should be. Why should a company know the dates of my period? Why? That is my problem. So those things can be done. It's just that people decide not to do them well. And then accessibility. WebAIM is a company about accessibility in the US, and it researched a million websites about the WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and 98% of websites failed. The most common mistakes were low contrast, lack of alternative text, empty links, no forms, no correct forms. And this is not something that people should not come to teach us. Nobody should come and teach us how to create alternative text. We should know how to do this. And as a matter of fact, we do know this. So why don't we do it? Something else is Starbucks confirmed that its Wi-Fi networks, used the client's computer to mine Bitcoins. This is something that happened in Argentina, and they said that it was a mistake. And well, I would love that the bugs would give me money, but no, they're just bugs. And then Microsoft confirms that Edge is moving to Chromium. This is something that we already lived. This is the monopoly that we had in the 90s and the end of the decade of 2000, because 90% of users used only one browsers. And nowadays we'll have websites that don't work because they work only for Internet Explorer. So this process of killing a renderized process is not something that makes us happy. Now, something that should worry us is the amount of browsers that use Chromium, and now we are starting to have no diversity in browsers again. And then we have this news about Taylor Swift blacking out her website. She said, I want to make my website black, and now I want to have my website be just black. It was a totally black website, but it had to load 800 kilobits, and they had to load React to do that. Why? What's going on? It was just an empty website. So what happened to us? If we had so much technological development, so many good things happening in web development, why are we forgetting the user? Are we maybe losing empathy? Are we tired? This is something very complex, because maybe if we look at job search in development, they ask for a lot of things, but the truth is that lack of accessibility is not evil. If you don't put an alt attribute in an image, it's not evil. It's not, about cursing blind people. It's just lack of knowledge, lack of time, because this is the amount of things that we have to learn. Some things are more simple, of course. We don't have to worry about a round border, but at the same time, we're trying to do everything at the same time, and we're just one person, so we do everything mediocre, and we end up doing less. We end up worsening the situation. We end up with imposter syndrome, where we believe that everyone knows everything except me, and I don't have time, and I saw a video and I don't understand anything, but I don't want to acknowledge it because I'm embarrassed. And there's so much to learn and so little time, and there's also a life out there outside of work. So I want to tell everyone that the false full stack developers is something good. If you ever felt like a false full stack developer, well, I really love front-end development, and do not let that overwhelm you. It is great for you to specialize, and learn a bit about things. You don't have to be an expert in everything, because the web is beautiful, and I think we can do amazing things if we have, as I have shown. And this year 2020 have showed us the importance of the websites and how important it is to connect each other, and we need to take care of it a little more and take care of the users, because when we inspect elements and we try to solve problems, but the user needs the website to work with probably a screen reader, because the person has no other way to use the website. And we need to take care among each other, because if we do not take care of each other, how are we going to do things well? We need to be well, we need to take vacations, we need to check on our college colleagues. If one of our colleagues is tired, we need to ask what they need, because we need to take care of each other to keep creating wonderful things that is about the web, and to create more and more pizza cats in the universe. So thank you very much, JSConf Mexico.